Hey everybody, welcome to another Tech Thursday. My name is Jonathan Price. First of all, thank you for bearing with me. Had some stuff that just came up and working with some directors and some family stuff came up, so wasn't able to get this video ready in time for Thursday morning, but hopefully Thursday afternoon will be good for you guys. We are running into a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is riding the emotion of happiness and all the things that entails. So let me back up a little bit. So when we started this series, we started with the overall view of writing for different emotions and how to do that for certain types of emotions and in relation to picture. So we started off with the general overview, and then in week 2, we went to surprise. We started with surprise, and we talked about oh goodness, if I remember correctly, the movement between thirds. So moving from like a C major to a E flat major, and going over how they're called chromatic medians and how these chromatic medians can give you this sense of a surprised feeling if used correctly. Then in week 3, we moved to bad and scoring bad emotions and how important the use of thirds were and the use of major, minor thirds, things like that. Fearful, angry, disgusted, and sad. All these 4 kind of blur together in their techniques because they use a lot of the techniques that we used for these first 2. And we talked a lot about how synths work in these, and we wrote some stuff, and we just did a lot of different stuff with all these and blended some of these together. So I encourage you to go back and look through all of these videos if you can, if you want to. They're kind of long, and hopefully this one won't be too long. Yeah, we're going to jump right in. So, happy. Now, as I said earlier, this is probably my absolute favorite genre to write. I am generally a happy person, and I tend to romanticize things a lot. And so it's really easy for me to write music that sounds happy. It just depends on the mood of happiness that I'm in. For whatever reason, like we all have our strengths in terms of what we'd like to score. So some of you may score horror films really, really well, or trailers really, really well, or action, animation, different types of animation, things like that. My niche is scoring happy and surprised and sad. This side of the wheel, because I get really in touch with these emotions very easily, and can and my music has been described as hopeful. For some reason, no matter what I write, there's always this air of hope in whatever I write. And so I don't necessarily say that to brag on myself a little bit, but for you as a composer, it's really important to figure out where you are and where you want to be. For instance, when I was starting writing, I really wanted to be the next Hans Zimmer or John Williams or insert name here. And the more I tried to be like them, the further I got from myself and the further I got from being happy with my music. I could write, kind of like them. I could do the big drums and the big brass and all that kind of stuff, but there was no... depending on the score, there was no real intimacy in the music I was writing, and I missed that. And in that level of intimacy comes from the relationships I've cultivated with, 1, my wife, 2, my kids, my family. Those kind of things have fostered this new sense of hope and content and feeling a feeling of value and love and all those wonderful, hopeful and happy things. And so it's important to realize that the things in your life are deeply affecting the way you write, regardless of whether you're writing happy music, surprise music, bad, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad. Now, all of these are very generic, and the more you get into the second level and the third level of wheels, you tend to see, well, what exactly am I feeling in a particular moment? And so a lot of the writing that I write comes out of this. So I can write something angry with a little bit of hope in it, or something intimate, or something that's loving. That just comes from my own personal experience and my own personal love for music, love for my family, my wife. Every aspect of my life comes from this happy and surprised viewpoint. And so it's important that when you go back and you look at this wheel and you go back and look at your writing, to really understand who you are as a person and then apply that to your writing. They can't be separated. So don't try to separate those two things, and you'll just end up a whole lot happier. So we're going to dive into, so we have this emotion of happy, and I apologize for the little soapbox at the beginning. It's just something that's super important to me. There's a couple of ways that we can score this happiness, this all-encompassing happy sound. The biggest and basically the starting point for any sort of happiness is going to be starting with major keys. Major keys. Okay. So right now I'm starting with a C major. So you guys can download this. I think you can download it from the Facebook page. If not, just message me and I'll send it to you. It's pretty easy to find. You can also Google it. I've had this chart for a long time. So, I'm going to close this, or I'll minimize it. Okay. So C major. This is the key that I'm going to love and I'm going to stick in for today because it's easier to follow theory-wise. There's so many different things that you can do to create different moods of happy. So if I wanted to create something that's warm and intimate and happy, you can create slow tempos, slow moving arpeggios. Okay, so something like that, or even just basic chord pads. Okay, that's a really nice, rich, warm, hopeful, intimate sound. Okay, minor sevenths are great to use. Excuse me. That's money right there. And then I also add the sixth. So for all you theory buffs, I am going to try my hardest to be absolute in my theoretical speaking because I got called out on it last week. Just can't please everybody, and that's okay. I don't care. All right, anyway. C major. Okay, that's really warm and happy. Okay, so that's one way that you can get to the this peaceful, accepted, trusting, and optimistic kind of sound. Okay, I'm going to stay on this side to get to these proud, interested, content, and playful. Playful, I'm going to touch on here in a second because it's a little bit different than these. I think. Proud, you're going to have a little bit more of a volume increase, probably. Interested, something that's probably more bouncing. Think of, I think of, what is it? Silvestri, who scored Forrest Gump. That opening is very, I think, interested and content and proud when I hear that beginning opening sequence where the feathers falling down and it's just a beautiful image to me. very pleasing and warm, and like everything is okay, and I don't have to worry about anything. So you could probably go up a little bit in your register, and probably start a melody on G, above middle C, or E. Maybe C. You might get a little, depending on the instrumentation. Let's try. So I'm using the same chords. C, let's see, what was I using? A G over B, B in the bass, or a G in first inversion. Down to F, root position, and then G. That's all I'm using for right now. You may be wondering, what in the world is this music that he's got up here? And I'll play this in a second, I promise. I just want to get to some of these emotions and how they kind of sound in relation to where you put them in the register. Same chord progression, the same notes, just where you put them, and then different rhythms to get something out of it. So if I wanted to put it up high and get something a little more intimate, playful, kind of romance, depending on the type of romance, very childlike, very loving in that sense. Okay, so something like that. Just using those chords, just using those very basic chords, and then using different rhythms. Another thing to create like that Disney sound, you have a lot of these flourishes into thirds, and a lot of strings and violins do this. Okay, it's nice when you have Williams uses this trick a lot, where he'll voice a chord, and he'll just have these trills between all these notes. It's a very Williams thing. He does that on a lot in Hook. And man, if you guys haven't listened to that Hook soundtrack, or it's been a while, go listen to it. Go listen to Hook. Flight to Neverland. Man, that is a money piece right there. You'll hear a lot of the clarinets and woodwinds doing a lot of those trills and these little flourishes. I think he does one that's kind of like that stuff. So let's dive into this track here real quick. So this track I wrote after, I think I wrote this like 2 years ago or something, a year or two ago, and it was after taking my kids to different things, like the zoo, the toy store, the mall, wherever it was that we were. And there was something that was kind of magical about how they saw life, and how they saw fun and adventure in the really small, mundane things that sometimes we as adults feel are rather insignificant and rather boring, if you will. And there's just this life, this passion that they have, and I couldn't escape it. And so I had to write it, and I had to write what I was feeling. And my daughter was playing with this music box, and there was something that was so almost romantic about this particular music box, and how it sounded, and how it came across. And so I wanted to write something with a music box. And so I was thinking, okay, well, we're in a toy store. What kind of things in the toy store would this sound like? And so I wanted to write something that was happy, and that was magical, and that was romantic, it all in the same sense. Now there's techniques to get all of these, and so the first couple of ways I showed you, which I was using those major chords in all throughout the octave and voicing them in different instruments, you can get a lot of mileage out of that. The second was using trills, those kind of things, and then sevenths and suspensions. So if I were to use right, that has a very happy and pleasing kind of driving sound. So major sevenths, minor sevenths are huge. Major minor thirds, you can kind of, if you do them in trills, so if I have a minor third down here, it's going to create a weird sound, but it can kind of work in inner voices. So if I have a minor third and major third, or a major third, depending on where you voice it. Now this is a fully F7. Sorry. You can use diminished sevenths, which are a lot of fun. Major sevenths chord, different voicings, and then kind of like that, kind of gives you a weird kind of happy feeling. A lot of trills, those are fantastic. Flourishes, harps, strings, pianos, woodwinds, all those types of instruments are really, really, really great at flourishes, using things like mark trees, which are the little bell chimes that you kind of hear that are on the little stand. You kind of run your fingers across. This is if you're not familiar with instrument names and you want to hear what it sounds like, this is it. Okay, that kind of thing. Okay, glockenspiel is huge for that toy-like, childlike way to enhance a melody. So a lot of times you'll hear the glockenspiel kind of sit on top of violins, flutes, piccolos, things like that. So that's an orchestration thing that you can do for getting that happy sound. A lot of that magical stuff will come from your chimey type instrument. So your glockenspiel, mark trees, wind chimes, tubular bells sometimes. That has a more heroic, big action type happy sound to it. So I will try not to dive too much into the orchestration side of this. But there are some things that create this happy sound. And my favorite sound, if I'm going to be writing in a happy, is, whoops, what happened? Oh, so is writing this particular voicing, which is open fifths on the bottom, C, G, C, and then a open voicing, or in the right hand, a first inversion C chord. So I have root with a C and then the open voicing. So we have closed voicing, open voicing, open voicing. Okay, so this is technically second inversion. Second inversion, right hand, left hand in the bass with the root note. So we have, this is probably my favorite inversion to write, and it just so happens that this particular this piece that has come out of watching my kids happens to be in this particular inversion. Actually, it's in first inversion. I'm sorry, because I start with a C. So I'm going to play this for you, and then I'm going to talk about some of the instrument orchestration stuff that I did over here to kind of make it sound happier, and what I had before. So just to recap just a little bit, we have to make some happy sounding music to get you started. We have a major chord in 3 different registers broken out generally, and so when we talk about registers, we're going to talk in a couple of weeks in orchestration about what instruments go to what registers, and that creates that warm sound that you want, or that kind of bounce and fun, more bouncy and fun, more romantic, childlike. childlike, bell-like, more masculine, heroic type happy sounds. So those 3 octaves: trills, sevenths, suspensions, different types. And then you also have this, which I love, is you have these low drones, or you have these low pedal points. I love pedals. They're fantastic. I use them all the time. Okay, so those are some basics to get you started into how to write this happy genre. And there are so many more things that I can go into, but I want to get through this piece. I want to let you hear it, and I want you to feel this intimate, hopeful. Basically, I tried to write something that was all of these put together at that particular time, and I hope that comes through. And if it didn't, please let me know, because I would love to hear where you think it could get better. And because if we're not doing this to get better, then we're not in the right industry. All right, so here you go. This is The Toy Store. So let's look at kind of what I did. So let's start with the woodwinds. And I want to show you these inner voicings. So I'm going to start with the flute and the bassoon, and they kind of follow what the French horn does, picking up its melody and then creating a counter melody versus what the violins do as they take over in this descending line. So here's the flute and the bassoon. Okay, so I hope you heard those suspensions in there. And so I'm going to highlight these. And let me zoom out here real quick. So I have this run for both the clarinet, the first and second clarinet, and the oboe. And it's a very simple major scale run. And it leads to this, what's called a hocket, if you will, where you have a instrument playing one sort of rhythm, and then you have another instrument playing in a syncopated form against that rhythm. So if you see here, so if I highlight just the clarinet, here's the clarinet. It's doing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay. And the oboe is doing, clarinet 1, clarinet 2. Clarinet 2 is doing 1 and 3 and 1 and 3 and. Okay, so I'm taking out beats 2 and beats 4. So this creates kind of a, let me show you just the oboe and the clarinet. So this isn't being played right now. So I changed up the rhythm here just a little bit to be a little bit different. It almost creates like not a reverse effect, but a sonic flipping of where your ear tracks. And so when I add in this clarinet, you'll hear where it changes here, and it almost sounds like, wait, what? I did it on purpose. So now it sounds like where the upbeat is, it falls on the downbeat, and you that gets more pronounced, and for whatever reason or another, it almost makes it seem like the beat has switched places. It's kind of a cool effect to kind of throw off an audience if the part gets a little mundane, just adding that single note. So if I take out this note, let me highlight oboe and the clarinet, and if I take out these notes right here, listen to it. It sounds completely different. Whoops, let me get back here. Okay, so I moved. So originally it goes here because that's what I have everywhere else. But if I move it back to beat 2, it just creates this little different aspect. So hopefully you get that. So I wrote this little part based on thinking of a kid's laughter, basically, and without getting too detailed into it. So hearing all 3 of these parts again, or all the woodwind section. Hear that suspension right here with the clarinet? That 7th, just to give it a little bit more tension into that final chord, just to give a little bit of tension and release. All right, let's quickly dive into what I did for the brass. So the brass is a lot of the same. The trombones are basically doubling what the clarinet and the oboe are doing, just in more of a chordal fashion. They fill out the whole chord. So you can kind of see here, the first and the bass trombone are in octaves, with the second trombone taking the middle voice, going from a wide open voicing to a closed voicing. That just creates a little bit more intimacy, and then really closed voicing chords in the middle here, with some dissonance, some seconds, suspensions, and seconds right here. I think thirds, octaves and thirds, so 6th. So my son played these wonderful notes, so I'm going to delete those. All right, so I'm going to start we'll start over here with the horn line. So very similar to what I was doing with the woodwinds. So here's the 4-part harmony with the horns and the tuba. Big, nice, warm, rich chords. I tell you what, man, if you guys like writing for horns, writing those nice, close, thick harmonies make just this beautiful, milky, warm, honey type sound. That's one of my favorite sounds. That's why I love composers like Alan Silvestri and Theodore Shapiro and Alan Menken, and composers who write these nice, big, thick chords that just, oh man, warms my soul to the bone. I'm not going to play the percussion really, except for, well, no, to the percussion, except for the timpani and cymbals maybe. Well, we'll just play it all. So in my percussion, I have piano, music box, harp, wind up. There's a music box VST that's really cool. The Mark tree, Glock, cymbal, timpani, all those. So I'm going to start it here. And I'm just going to use, and I just use piano and music box. And piano I panned to the right a little bit, and the music box I panned to the left a little bit. I wanted to give more of a distinct view of what was happening between two kids. So they're playing together. Something magical happens. So one thing that the glockenspiel is super useful for, and I mentioned it earlier, is playing the melody with instruments like the violins, first and second violins, harps, flute, piccolo, anything that has a very defined melody line. The Glock is just something that gives it that little bit more presence and childlike wonder. And Williams uses this all the time, and this is a technique that he uses where he outlines the melody in the Glock, and he doesn't necessarily do the entire melody, but he outlines the major notes of the melody. So if I go up here, if I solo the violin and the glockenspiel, you'll kind of hear what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start it here. So let me turn down the volume of the violins a little bit so you can hit a little bit more balance, just those two. Okay, so you kind of hear what was happening in there. So finally, let's dive into these strings real quick. Now, some of you are going to get on me in the orchestration portion of this, particularly in these strings, because you're going to say, but Jonathan, there's only 5 there's only 5 real instruments for the strings. There's first, second, viola, cello, bass. Yes, I know that. The beautiful thing about writing in the box is that you can add all these instruments if you'd like to. And for me, if I were to actually orchestrate this out, these pizzicato strings would probably be divisi against the second violins and the violas, just to give it to put them in context, because I would have the seconds up here and the violas doing this, and then later when the second violins come in, I would actually divide this up into violas, and the violas would split this pizzicato section up here while the seconds played this. So I do fully understand the orchestration and how this doesn't work as it is. If I were to print this off to players would be like, what the hell are you doing? So I get that. I understand that. Don't eat me up. Okay. Just go with it for right now. It created the sound that I wanted, so I'm sticking with it. So here is the strings. Now, what I forgot to do was add I wanted this string to be a tremolo, but I didn't feel comfortable with the tremolo patches that I have. And so as it's written out, it says tremolo, just to give it that little more bright, kind of shaked feel, I guess. So there's that pedal I was talking about. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of harmonic stuff going on, except for in this little section where the seconds are playing. I think a third are playing the alto part. The cellos are playing the tenor line. And then it kind of, Williams uses this trick a lot where he'll, when it's a huge melodic section, like think Jurassic Park, think Flight to Neverland, E.T., a lot of that kind of stuff. When he has these really big melodic sections, he'll use almost the entire string section, some trumpets or horns, and then woodwinds to kind of flourish, and then the inner voicing woodwinds to play the melody as well, to give it more support. So he has the melody in almost every single octave through almost any voice, and it creates this really big sonic space for creating this happy sound. So let me play this part for you again right here. So this is all octaves. And harmonically, when you do this with live players, all of those harmonics that if they're played in tune, you can hear, sounds out the harmony naturally. And so you kind of hear those, and that's why it feels nice and warm when you have the octaves spread out. Whoops, I'm not even on my piano anymore. So this, where's my piano? There you go. So you have this. Come on. Sorry, guys. Right? For some reason, it just fills out all those harmonics, and you can kind of hear where the fifths, the thirds, and the sevenths are supposed to be, which is kind of cool. So all that to say, go write some happy music. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I tried to make this as short as possible, so I thank you for being patient, and I hope I was able to give you some sort of direction as how to write these happy music. Oh, one thing I forgot. When writing melodies. Okay. Here comes another 20 minutes. I'm just kidding. So when I write melodies in major keys. I like to use this one. I didn't, but I like to use these little accidentals. So the accidentals I like to use are C sharp, F sharp, and G sharp in the key of C particularly. So if I have a melody that starts something super simple like that, okay? To do this effectively, and that wasn't very effective, study Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. Those guys, they are masters at using these inharmonic chord tones to supplement their melody, to give it a little bit, oh, I know where we're going and I know how to get around. It's using the C and moving to D. There's the F sharp, C using an A major, or a B flat diminished chord, or a G diminished chord, or F sharp major. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can use inharmonically to get your melodies to sound way more interesting than just John Williams' opening theme for, was it Raiders of the Lost Ark? Outlines the C chord. Okay, so he's famous for outlining chords in his melodies. That's why they're so memorable. So, okay, I hope you guys were able to take something away from this. And next week, Kevin Simon is going to be joining me, and we are going to be talking about composition. He's just going to ask me random questions. I have no idea what he's going to ask, so I could be put on the spot, which is going to be kind of fun. So join us next week as we look into this composition lesson between Kevin and I will try my best to answer his questions, and hopefully they don't get too crazy. So if you're listening to this, write down some questions. We'll get them all on next week. And then after that, we're going to be starting a series on MIDI orchestration. It's a lot like regular orchestration, and just using and how to use MIDI to get that sound that you're wanting. So don't miss next week, and then continue to watch as we follow through the next couple of weeks and into the summer. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day. Love you. Peace out.